Hey everybody, welcome to another Warships replay. This one is once again in the Atago on North. The team comps are a little more usual this time. The enemy team has a Taiho and a Ranger, we have a Lexington. We've got the extra battleship, whereas they have the second carrier. Other than that, the comp's the same number of cruisers, and same number of destroyers. Now for this one, I decide to head to the east of the map. I'm keeping my HE loaded at first, just in case I happen across a destroyer. AP is of course not very effective against destroyers unless you can hit them end on, and only at certain ranges even then. So generally HE is the best option against destroyers in any class of ship, but in particular in the larger ships, which just don't have the rate of fire needed to continuously pound out shots. I also want to hold on to my scout plane for a minute, just to avoid wasting precious seconds of having it airborne. We've actually got an Iowa on our team. This match was played quite shortly after the game went into open beta, and so it was interesting to see high tier ships so quickly, but people obviously were just using free XP to get into the higher tiers. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of doing that anymore, and so I'm going to have to grind my way up slowly. Already the enemy's fighters have been spotted over our side of the map. We can tell that there is a battleship heading down the east side, Colorado. Now the Colorado is a big letdown after the New Mexico. The New Mexico is probably the best US battleship below tier 8. The Colorado after it just feels completely unimpressive. Its survivability is barely any better, if really any better at all, given the fact it is a tier higher. Its guns are decent when they hit something. The problem is they never hit anything. It seems to really just shotgun shells all over the place, and unlike the New Mexico, you don't have enough guns for that to be an effective strategy. I quickly put out a broadside of HE at him just to see if I can catch him on fire. I don't, but I do manage to do 3,812 damage and knock out some of his light armament. I then put in a second HE broadside towards the Miyoko before switching to AP. I make a mistake here. I hold a steady course so I don't interrupt my aim for my next broadside, and in comes his. And oh god, he just hit me very, very hard. I think I took some fire from somebody else as well, but that really fucking hurt. I do get my revenge though. While another friendly Atago beaches himself next to a little village. And judging by those torpedoes, he's going to be heading back to his port very, very soon. I asked the Miyoko what ammo he was firing. I thought he must have been shooting AP there. Most pubby cruiser drivers don't. So I was actually surprised to find somebody able to put out that much damage, but he says he's shooting HE, so I must have taken fire from somebody else as well, because even if that had been a full broadside of AP hitting, I don't think I could have done that much damage in one go. So, I don't know. Either way, it really fucking hurt, and I didn't want it to happen again. We're already down 2 ships, 2 cruisers, both Atagos, and then half of mine as well. The enemy Colorado is persisting and pushing this way, but he's hooking back into the west, into that channel there around the islands, which will give him a bit more cover from me. So I do load HE here, hoping to get some more damage into him before he pulls into cover completely. And our destroyer's heading through the channel, no doubt planning to ambush him. We've actually also spotted a carrier just behind, although I don't have a shot on it. Colorado is still masked by that big mountainous island. Very inconvenient. And instead an Atlanta pops out around the corner. Now, given the choice between a ship I can't hit because it's behind terrain and a ship I can hit, I switch my fire to the Atlanta, and then switch to AP. Now, those torps must have come from a destroyer, so there is one lurking around. Thankfully, they miss me. I'm not sure they even were intended for me. I think they might have been meant for the battleship next to me. This Atlanta is going to be difficult to hit at this range because he has very quickly traversing turrets. They are, of course, the twin 5-gun mounts that you find on the gearing, the Tier 10 US destroyer, and they swivel so quickly that you can easily throw the ship around and keep your track on the target. This means that he can juke around from side to side while maintaining his fire. I cannot in this ship. Well, at least not to the same degree he can. I have to keep him on one side or the other. I do launch some torps there. They're highly unlikely to hit him. He is outside of my range when I fire them, but of course he is closing with me, so I expect him to be inside it by the time they arrive. However, from his very erratic course, it's really unlikely he will drive into them. They're more just there as, I guess, psychological bonus for me. I feel a bit more comfortable if there's fish in the water. Switch to AP because that happened. The Atlanta has no armor to speak of, and because it has those relatively small guns for a cruiser, I outrange it, both in terms of absolute gun range and effective gun range. He's just going to bounce off me, and he is shooting AP, as can be seen there. If he was shooting HE, he would probably actually set me on fire and probably fuck me. If you're engaging anything other than destroyers in an Atlanta, your best option is HE. It's the only cruiser that can't shoot AP reliably at same tier cruisers. And the Atlanta's chief strength, really, is its ability to vomit out so much HE so fast that it can pretty much permanently keep things on fire. Even more so than the Cleveland can. I double back here. I do dump a bit too much speed in that turn. I thought for a second here I was a sure goner, but luckily no, the enemy are having trouble hitting me. And I still have no idea where those torpedoes came from. There must be a Minakaze hanging around here. The enemy do have one, I believe? Nope, they have a Mitsuki and a Fubuki. So I'm honestly not sure how those torps are just materializing out of the air like that. It's probably the Mitsuki. I think his concealment range is about the same as the Minakaze's. I'm just astonished that he hasn't been lit. I'm now in a really bad situation, so I make a fighting retreat here. I get some pretty poor hits on that Pensacola. It looks like it was just spalling damage, no actual penetrations there. And I switch back to put some fire into the Colorado because I can tell that the Pensacola's angle that he's giving me is just no good. I'm just going to bounce if I hit him with AP. Of course, I'm going to not really do anything to the Colorado with AP either, but at least he was presenting a nice broadside target. Switch back to HE. I just don't have the AP power to pen through his deck, even with plunging fire, and so it's a better choice to try and burn him out with HE rounds. Unfortunately for me, I severely misjudged the lead. I thought he was travelling a lot faster than he was. He's now just outside my range, and so there's no point maintaining my aim on him. We're still a couple ships down, so the enemy have the advantage this match, but it's still not over yet. I'm still, of course, within the Colorado's gun range, but he's out of mine, and he's not too likely to get any accurate fire on me this far out, especially with how inaccurate the Colorado is, so I'm not too worried. I do make a slight weaving motion here just to try and mess with him a bit, but I'm not really concerned about incoming fire from him. I let our Iowa know what's coming down the east side, although it looks like most of them have turned around, so it's not really an issue anyway. And yes, that is an Iowa. Yes, it is fully upgraded. And when I carelessly get myself killed here in a moment, you'll be able to see the ship in all its glory. Now, as our New Mexico slips down next to me, I spot some torpedo bombers. And of course, I begin to turn into them, which is what you're meant to do with torpedo bombers, and I was also trying to keep them in range of my anti-aircraft, since I'd already triggered my ability for it. Unfortunately here, I'm too busy paying attention to what's going on in the middle of the map. I don't notice that the bombers are actually on a torpedo run, and although all but one of them is killed, and then he goes down, I turn the wrong direction, then turn back, I fail to slow down, and that's the end of me. Even the slightest lapse of attention around torpedo bombers can be fatal. So down to the bottom I go. I had an alright match. Perhaps didn't do as much damage as I would have liked, but I still did a fair bit. I was able to knock a huge chunk off of that enemy Myoko at the start of the game, and here we have the Iowa. Just look at this ship. This is the Tier 9 US battleship. The Tier 10, the Montana, is basically the same thing, just bigger and with an extra turret. But Iowa is a fantastically good battleship. It has some of the best anti-aircraft in the game. Any aircraft coming near it will be pretty much mown down. It has 9 16-inch guns, and the American 16 inches are probably the best guns in the game overall when it comes to battleship guns. It's also fairly maneuverable, it's also fast, and it's a really nice looking ship, which is of course very important. Now you may notice its secondary armament consists once again of those twin gun 5-inch turrets as seen on the Gearing and the Atlanta and several other US cruisers. In fact, the Cleveland has them as well, I believe. So those are the sort of standard US high-tier secondary armament, and they are very good because they're also anti-aircraft guns. And that's part of the reason the Iowa has such a murderous anti-aircraft rating, is because those things will shoot at planes when they come close enough. Now, if you're wondering how to tell the difference between a stock hull Iowa and an upgraded Iowa, the main place to look is the bridge. The stock Iowa has an exposed conning tower and then sort of like a more, I guess, old school looking setup. The upgraded Iowa has the fully enclosed compass bridge there, sitting on top of the conning tower. It looks a lot more modern, and if you're more familiar with the configuration the Iowa class were in during their time in service in the 80s, that's basically what it looks like, just obviously without all the newer stuff, the CIWS and the Tomahawks and all those goodies. I switch back here to our Mutsuki, who's kind of optimistically firing wide spreads into the enemy cap, where the majority of their ships seem to be concentrated for now. We do still have a carrier in the game, Lexington. Mutsuki's still got enough hit points to survive a few hits, but he's being chased by a Fubuki by the looks of it. Lexington is busy blue lining, probably because he's not paying attention to what his ship's doing, which is the downfall of many carrier drivers, I find. And the Iowa, unfortunately there, puts a whole broadside into an island and kills that dirt real good. This leaves him on reload as he pulls out in front of these guys. He's already missing some hit points from an earlier engagement. But the Iowa's a fairly strong ship. We finally lose the Mutsuki, and so it's just this guy and the carrier. can see the fantastic turn radius on this thing. It is a really maneuverable ship, and there goes some of the anti-aircraft. The enemy torp bombers panic, and so they launch a very wide spread. Unfortunately for the Iowa, he doesn't lose enough speed in that turn to avoid eating both torps, and then he eats another from the second spread. The enemy carrier knows what he's doing and is setting up attack runs from two directions at once. Against cruisers and destroyers, that isn't guaranteed to work, but against battleships, there's almost nothing you can do about it. The best way to avoid being targeted by that kind of thing is to not be out by yourself, and that's difficult when you're the second last guy left on the team. However, the Iowa's anti-aircraft has acquitted itself very well here. And so while the enemy is left to lick their wounds, aircraft-wise, he turns to engage the stuff now pushing our cap. While his armor might hold up well against the remaining enemies, high explosive is going to be his downfall, because he can't hold up against fire quite so well. Enemy carrier brings in some dime bombers to help out with the fire there. And they mostly get away with it, actually, even though the Iowa's fighter is engaging them. Now, I should mention that I'm pretty sure that fighter aircraft will panic torpedo bombers, and certain ships, mostly cruisers, but a couple of battleships, including the Iowa, do get a scout fighter, not just a scout. Now, that doesn't boost your gun range, at least on cruisers. It might for battleships, but I don't think it does, like a regular scout does, but it can engage enemy aircraft, and it does still provide some vision. So it's still useful, and it's a good deterrent to incoming torp bombers. Unfortunately, the enemy Atago is behind an island, so the Iowa has no clear shot on him, and this is pretty much a lost game. He's just got to hope he can survive until the end and get some more damage in.